It is a great day to be alive, and I am so thankful for God, Jesus Christ, who lives in us. In today's video titled, Wealth Transfer Timeline, Have We Arrived? I'm going to be taking a look at some indicators to try to answer that question. And these indicators are the April market crash, taking a look at the week of Passover, April the 13th, to be specific. We're going to take a look at the mantra crash, and also the unfortunate event with the Pope. We're going to also take a look at what actually happened on April the 13th. Before we get started, I'm not a financial advisor. Nothing that I'm sharing is financial advice. I'm simply sharing dreams, visions, and interpretations that I feel God has given me as it relates to crypto. Also, before we get started, I want to say thank you to everyone for your thoughts, your prayers, and your kind words during the time that I have been absent from doing videos. As my family and I prepared for our new edition, thank and praise God for our son who arrived healthy and fine, eating great, doing well. So thank you for your prayers. Please continue to keep us in your prayers as we prepare for this new phase of parenthood, our first son. So we're very, very excited. Please continue to pray for me as God continues to touch my body and bring me through this healing process super fast. Ready to bounce back and get back at it with my videos. So thank you again for your support, prayers, and kind words. It has not gone unnoticed. So now let's get into the video. So what I want to do is quickly share and explain the how and the why behind these four items. First, I want to explain how and why the month of April, explain why the week of Passover 2025, looking at the week of April 12th through the 20th, why April 13th, why was it a focus date, and to also take a look at April 19th, why was it important? And finally, I want us to take a look at what actually happened on April the 13th. Remember, April the 13th was a focus date during the week of Passover. It was a part of the timeline that I had placed here. We're looking at a crash/wealth transfer. Again, we want to answer the question, have we arrived? When it comes down to the wealth transfer timeline, have we arrived? So we're going to take a look at those things. We're going to answer those four questions, and then we're going to take a look at what actually happened. Now, to get us started on why the month of April, I want to quickly go back to July 9th. On July 8th, I knew I was supposed to have a dream that night, carrying over to July 9th. And based on the timeline and time sequence that God has given me during that time, the dreams, once one thing ends, something else starts, He would give me a dream. And so in this case, I knew I was supposed to have a dream on July 9th, and I did. In this dream, God told me the markets would crash in the third and fourth quarter. He did not reveal what year. He did not reveal which markets. He only said third and fourth quarter. So after having this dream, I ended up having two more dreams. And in these dreams, God began to reveal to me some things about a market crash. Here are the two videos where you can find those dreams. They're jam-packed with things that God just began to open up, things that I could not explain. It had to only be God to put these things together, putting us in a place where we're taking a look at the market crash, the Great Depression, the time frame of October 29th, 1929. And that alone helped me to understand that this is the path that God has me on when it comes down to looking at these two dates. So one date was given to me in one of the dreams, August the 6th, based on someone's birthday. The other date, October 17th, that was a date that God had given me in a market crash dream, as well as me being able to derive this date based on colors, numbers, things that He had shown me how to use to put together in order to derive dates. Because this is not focusing on October 17th, I'm just going to leave this slide here if you want to go back and take a look at why October 17th and what it means. I've always shared that in the beginning, I thought that was the date that the market would crash, but God has shown me through the course of the couple of months the true meaning of why October 17th and what it really means. And here is the 4 bullet points that He has given me. I have not received anything more outside of these 4 bullet points. But what does October 17th mean? It could mean that we will hear major news out of Israel. And that is what October 17th, the exact date, has been. Major news out of Israel since 2023, 2024, and only God knows what 2025 will hold as far as October 17th. But here and now, we're looking at major news out of Israel. It can also represent the colors of yellow and red. And when it comes down to looking at timelines and time frames, we're looking at 100 days, combining both colors. Also, it could be that October 17th is a market crash date, but it could also mean a crash or a collapse of some type, a government, a market, whether it's stocks or crypto, a country. And so in this video, I shared some specific things when it came down to types of collapses, not necessarily meaning it has to be a market crash. Also, leading indicators. This October 17th date could be a leading indicator to a crash or a collapse of some type, including even a market crash. And so as we take a look at tariffs and trade wars and all of the countries that have been involved, all of those who have decided not to retaliate and those who decided to retaliate, out of all those countries, the only one that decided not to bend the knee and to retaliate against all the tariffs that have been put out on Liberation Day, China was the only ones that decided to retaliate and not bend the knee. Take a look at China's flag. What color is it? Red and yellow. And if I'm not mistaken, I've been hearing things in the news as it relates to China's economy, things that are happening because they have put a 125% tariff on the U.S. as the U.S. have put 145% tariff on them. The consequences of that is I'm hearing that their government is collapsing. And so this is a great example of color of yellow and red. We can circle that off, representing China. We can also circle crash or collapse of some type because you're looking at China as a whole, the government, what's happening over there simply because of this trade war. And then also a leading indicator because when China decided to retaliate, what happened to our markets? Now, I don't want to get ahead of myself in this video, but just to kind of give you an idea of how this October 17th key is actually working. And this is God putting together, not me. I'm still learning as I go. So getting back to this August 6th date, it was given to me in one of these dreams, August 6th. Please keep that date in mind. Some of you who've been following my videos for a long time, you already know where I'm going with this August 6th date. But before we get into this date, it's very important to note that God had given me the nudge to look into using the Hebrew calendar when it comes down to doing this timeline and coming up with dates and deriving dates, to take a look at the Hebrew calendar, simply because Israel has been on this timeline from the beginning. It's been all about Israel, all the major dates. As I stated before, October 17th, 2023, major event about the Israel war. And then in 2024, when it came down to October 17th date, the mastermind behind the individual who was behind the attack, the October 7th, 2023 attack on Israel, he was confirmed dead on October 17th of last year. So again, major news centered around this date. And this year, the beginning of this year, I felt God leading me to take a look at the Hebrew calendar. Use the Hebrew calendar when it comes down to deriving certain dates. And so here I am going forward, following what the Spirit of the Lord is leading me to do. And as I'm doing my research on this Hebrew calendar, I come to find out that the Hebrew calendar began in 3761 BCE, but it was October 7th, 3761 BCE. Not a coincidence that this calendar began to be used on October 7th, and the attack on Israel happened on October 7th. Same day, different year. For me, that was confirmation. Now let's get to this August 6th date. So based on this person's birthday, this is how God gave it to me to understand that this was an important date. And when August 5th/6th, depending on where you are in the world when this took place, 2024, the Japan market crash happened based on the unfortunate event of the carry trade. Now, if we were to use our calendar, that would have been August 6th, third quarter for us. But because God is instructing me to take a look at the Hebrew calendar for last year would have been the fourth quarter. August 6th would have been the fourth quarter. So now going back to the dream about the markets were crashing in the third and fourth quarter, I'm looking at our calendar, third quarter, August 6th, and I'm also looking at the Hebrew calendar, fourth quarter, August 6th. I'm looking at a third and a fourth quarter market crash solely on this one particular day for the Japan market. However, despite seeing this year, again, 2025, I felt that God was leading me to look particularly at the third and fourth quarter based on the Hebrew calendar. And so doing that, again, August 6th of last year would have been the fourth quarter for the Hebrew calendar, and now we need the third quarter. The third quarter for the Hebrew calendar for this year would be April, May, and June. But which of these 3 months? Which of these 3 months will the coming third quarter market crash take place? And this I already shared in this particular video titled Reset, New Year, Greater Faith, Wealth Transfer. What must fall, crash, and die before we receive our wealth transfer? That was the question in this video. And I went through and explained all of this towards the Hebrew calendar, my use of all of this. I'm just really going through it really quickly for the sake of this video. So the fourth quarter Hebrew calendar, Japan market crash took place last year. We're looking for the third quarter market crash. Is it going to be in April, May, or June 2025? Which one? So this portion of the video will answer the question, why April? Out of those 3 months, why was April selected? So again, at the beginning of the year, God gave me a word, reset. The question that came to me was, what has to fall, crash, and die before the wealth transfer take place? From here, God reminded me of April the 10th. April the 10th, 2023. The scripture reference that he gave me on this particular day in 2023 was Exodus 12. But of course, God had his own unique way of getting me to the book of Exodus chapter 12. This is what took place. On April 10th, 2023, God spoke 2 things to me. What does new moon mean? And the second thing was April 15th. Long story short, I began to do my biblical research and found this. New moon was a time in scripture when the prophet is awaited to hear from Yahweh. It was a set time when God would speak concerning his purpose and plan for the people. And these were the 3 scriptures. There were 4 scriptures that I found in my research: Ezekiel 26:1, Ezekiel 29:17, Haggai 1:1. And then I found myself over in the book of Exodus chapter 12, looking at verses 1 through 2. Each of these scriptures was an example of the definition of new moon, a time in scripture when the prophet is awaited to hear from Yahweh as it related to God giving them a word concerning his purpose and plan for his people. Moving over to the book of Exodus chapter 12, verses 1 through 2. And it reads, And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. For us, that would be like the beginning of the year. It should be the first month of the year for you. So that would be our January, just as an example, which would be a new year. When New Year rolls around for us, it's like a reset. Everything starts over again. So when I read this, the first thing that came to my mind, was reset. What God gave me, that one word, reset. And as I continue to read through the book of Exodus, we all know that this book has to do with Passover. In this book, God is preparing his people, the children of Israel, for Passover and their exit out of Egypt with great wealth or substance, just as God had promised Abraham many years prior. Moving on to verse 3, God tells them, Speak ye unto the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day. Now, this was shocking to me simply because God spoke those 2 words to me on April 10th. And so in this particular verse, they're given instructions that on the 10th day, do X, Y, Z, as they're preparing for the feast, for the Passover. Moving on to verse 6, And ye shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. So now we're on day 14. We're going to skip down to verse 18. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, do XYZ. So now we're looking at day 14th. Remember, I shared that God spoke to me, what does new moon mean? And also April 15th. It wasn't until this year that I understood what April 15th meant as I began to go through all of this, looking at this whole thing about Passover, looking at the Hebrew calendar. And so what I came to find out was that Passover, this entire book of Exodus chapter 12, Passover starts on what is called the 15th of Nisan. It is the Passover holiday is when it begins. Nisan is the first month of the Hebrew year. The 15th of Nisan is the first month of the Hebrew year. And as God spoke to them, this shall be unto you the beginning of months, the first day in the month. So in other words, he's preparing them for Passover or the 15th of Nisan. God is resetting the time for the children of Israel to the beginning of the Hebrew calendar, which again is known as Passover or the 15th of Nisan. Well, if we go back to 2022, 2023, 2024, and even 2025, the 15th of Nisan is always in April. So the month of April stood out to me when I saw this. So in other words, instead of saying the 15th of Nisan, is it okay to say the 15th of April? And so this answered the question as to why God was saying on April 10th, 2023, 15th, April 15th. Now I understand. In other words, he was saying Passover, April 15th, Passover, the 15th of Nisan. He was putting me in the month of April, all the way back in 2023, letting me know that there is something special about this Passover. This Passover, I didn't know if it was that year, the next year. And here we are in 2025, and I'm looking at the week of Passover. But all this is becoming understood this year. And so, of course, I'm going to say, okay, God, we're looking at Passover 2025, something to do with what Exodus 12 is all about. Preparing for Passover, preparing for the exit, preparing for that wealth transfer as we're leaving out of Egypt, as we're leaving out of this season of need. God, you're preparing us for this promised land. You're preparing us to lead out from where we are with great substance. And the first thing that comes to mind is the wealth transfer. Again, have we arrived? And so God has helped me to understand the meaning of new moon as well as the meaning of April 15th. And so here we have it. We have the Hebrew calendar. We're looking for the third quarter crash in 2025 because we saw the fourth quarter in 2024 with the Japan or the 6th date. And so out of these 3 months, April, May, and June, I now understand that April is that month. And I now understand that the week of Passover 2025 is important. And so now I'm looking at April 12th through the 20th of 2025. Now, we left off with our scripture reading. We were looking at verses 18 when it was talking about day 14 and what you should do on day 14. And so moving on to verse 28, and the children of Israel went away and did as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron, so did they. And it came to pass that at midnight, if it's the 14th day, at midnight, we're now on the 15th day, the 15th of Nisan. We're looking at Passover, and we know that the death angel came through that night, and all of the firstborn, those who did not have the blood over their doors and had followed through just as God had instructed Moses and Aaron to tell the children of Israel to do. For those who did not do it, then they saw a loss of their firstborn, even the cattle's. It said that the Lord smote all the newborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne unto the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of the cattle. God wasn't playing. So what had to fall, crash, and die before the children of Israel received their wealth transfer? Exodus 7 through 11 gives us all those plagues that God brought forth as he hardened the Pharaoh's heart. The Pharaoh and the Egyptian economy had to fall and crash at the hand of God. The Pharaoh and the Egyptian economy had to fall and crash at the hand of God, and that was done based on those plagues. And so now we have the last plague that takes place in Exodus 12, the final plague, the death angel and the death of the firstborn. That happened on Passover, or the 15th of Nisan. So then I began to ask myself this question. Well, what has to fall, crash, and die before we receive our wealth transfer? And again, all this was shared in this reset video back in January of this year. So again, what has to fall, crash, and die before we receive our wealth transfer? So here are a group of events that I shared in that particular video, answering the question, possibly answering the question, what will fall and crash from its high place and die before we receive our wealth transfer? Will it be the fall of our economy, the U.S. dollar collapsing due to an unfortunate event like another pandemic? Would a certain crypto or cryptos have to fall, crash before we see the wealth transfer? Could this fall involve the U.S. being involved in a physical war or an attack on U.S. soil? Could this fall or crash happen simply because of cyber attacks? And all of these events that I'm sharing, these are things that God had revealed to me in dreams. And here are a few of those videos. a storm of economic shocks. I shared a dream about how I saw a storm coming, and this storm was sucking up and spitting out and sucking up and spitting out briefcases that I feel is related to businesses, sucking up or sucking the life out of businesses. And that could be related to trade war and tariffs that we're seeing right now. Also, another dream had to do with the collapse of the US dollar and us dealing with, and it dealt with international banking versus national banking. National banking was no longer a thing. It was all about international banking. And that brought about the idea of crypto and XRP, something replacing the dollar. Another video that I shared had to do with coffee and the U.S. economy and how I saw 3 cups of coffee. 2 cups of coffee had to do with the U.S. economy, and the other was the world economy. And right now, what we're seeing with tariffs, we're seeing how it seems as if the U.S. is kind of standing, or started out standing on an island on its own and against the world economy. Will our economy at some point need double stimulation? Because we know that coffee is a stimulant. Here are a few videos that I shared as it relates to certain crypto collapsing or falling. As it relates to war, here are a few more videos that you can check out if you'd like. Right now, we know that we're looking at the tariffs and trade war. So that is the newest form of war. God had been revealing this to me since 2024, July. But I didn't understand what type of, what was it he was trying to show me. All I knew is that I saw a backwards flag, meaning that we're marching towards war. The U.S. is. Didn't understand how it was going to happen or how we were going to get involved with war, as well as my banana dream that all brought me to understanding something about tariffs, banana war, trade war. He was showing me all these things, and I did not see the full picture until this year. And so this is how the United States is involved in a war. It is a trade war as well as other things about war that we're hearing. God gave me the word that the fight will be in the water. You will hear about it, but you will not see it. That is what's happening with the Yemen and the Houthis as the U.S. have been responding to how they have been attacking those ships, U.S. ships coming through those waters. So back in 2024, in July, when I was saying, oh, backwards flag, the United States is marching towards war. How? What are we doing? And we've seen this year, just how much the U.S. is involved in war, whether it's a trade war or whether it's war over in Israel. We have been involved in a lot of things dealing with war. And I could understand how back then, but God is revealing that now. And as it relates to cyber wars, God had given me a dream, and in that dream, my research led me to understand something about cryptography. And so to hear more about that dream and how God led me to this topic of cryptography, this is that particular video. So again, all of these events that I have listed here, what will have to fall from its high place, crash, and die before we receive our wealth transfer. And as we go back, look at Exodus 7 through 11 and then Exodus chapter 12, again, we see the list of plagues that took place that caused the Egyptian economy and Pharaoh to fall from their high place and to crash. And then we saw the death of the firstborn, those who did not have the blood over their doors. So now let's compare that to April 2025. What has to fall, crash, and die before we receive our wealth transfer? And for the sake of comparison, I'm not saying that these things that I have listed here in green are plagues or anything like that, but I'm just using it as a comparison with Exodus 7 through 11. So things that could cause a crash or a fall, we're looking at trade war, tariffs, we're looking at wars, the issues that we're seeing with ICE deportation, war negotiation, leaked classified information, and then stock market crashes. And again, we're looking at the month that God had led me to, the month of April. And so what did we see in the month of April? We saw tariffs and trade wars kick it up a notch. Saw what happened to the stock market. Specifically on April 2nd through the 4th, we saw the markets crash because of all the retaliatory tariffs that was put out on that particular day. So keep it in mind, the Hebrew calendar, the month of April, a crash, that third quarter market crash that I'm looking for based on that dream from 2024, the markets will crash in the third and fourth quarter. Again, we're looking at these things in green, each affecting our economy and other parts of other countries currently in what appears to be a negative way. So as we're looking at the trade war and tariffs, China has been our focus. Who will blink first, the United States or China? Looking at our wars, we have the Ukraine-Russia war. Of course, we have the Israel and Hamas war, and we have the trade wars. Taking a look at ICE and deportation, we see all the issues that we have been hearing in the news about those who have been wrongfully deported. All that just raising a lot of issues and concerns within our economy, as well as war negotiations. I don't think anybody can forget about what happened at the White House between Zelensky, Trump, and J.D. Vance. And then we saw more negotiations going on during the Pope funeral, as well as negotiations going on between the United States and Iran when it comes down to nuclear issues. All these things are examples of the United States being involved in a war in some type, although it may not be physical. Right now, we are still finding ourselves in the midst of what has been going on with all of these wars. And leaked classified information. Who can forget about this? That has been an issue. People just concerned about the security of our economy, our information. Have things been handled the right way to ensure that we're not being hacked and other countries are not looking into us and those who are working for our government? And then this brings us back to the market crashes, different things that we've seen throughout the month of April. The market's falling simply because of tariffs and the uncertainties of investors and what's actually going to happen. And so I didn't think that it was a coincidence that here we have the Japan markets crashing to the point where there was a suspension due to a circuit breaker. And so here we have poor Japan again, looking at it crashing in the month of April 2025, third quarter. Whereas when we saw it in 2024, it was in the fourth quarter on August 5th/6th, again, depending on where you are in the world. And so I can definitely say that God pointed me in the right direction when it came down to the month of April. And why? The month of April being the month where the fourth quarter market crash, the third quarter market crash would happen. The fourth quarter happened in 2024, third quarter happened in 2025. Japan was indeed one that stood out the most simply because of the circuit breaker, in my opinion. But we also had our markets to crash and fall almost down to bear territory. But since then, we have saw a rebound. And so that, again, brings the question, have we arrived? Are we now in a place where we are ready to come out of this with great substance, just as the children of Israel did? And so now that we've looked at what I'm calling Exodus 7-11 things that could cause our economy to fall, our markets to crash. We looked at, again, trade war, tariffs, wars, ISIS deportation, war negotiations, leaked classified information, stock market crash, and it could be more things to add to the list, but these are the things that I have been watching the most. This brings us to Exodus 12, Passover at midnight, the 15th of Nisan, the death angel. And so on April 21st, the same day that my baby was born, Pope Francis died on Easter Monday. I've never heard of Easter Monday until this year. But depending on where you are in the world, the Pope died during the week of Passover. He passed away on the 20th for some and the 21st for others. It just depends on your time zone, whether you're in the United States or somewhere else. It just depends. Also, I saw that Pope Francis was the oldest of 5 siblings. So what I am not saying is that the Pope was not covered under the blood. So I'm not saying anything about him. I'm just saying his death and the timing of his death occurred during the week of Passover, the last day. for some, for others the 21st, and it's just the 21st. But being that he was the Pope, he was well known. His passing would have been known just as the Pharaoh's passing of his son was well known throughout Egypt. And so this is one of those things that I think that would have stuck out, and people would have taken notice of. And so that is why I'm placing the unfortunate death of the Pope with Exodus 12 as the death angel or passing of someone. And again, he was the oldest of 5 children. Okay, so far we've answered the question, why the month of April and why the week of Passover. Now we're going to move into how and why April 13th. And why was April 13th a focus date? And I've also shared this in previous videos, and everything I'm going to share as far as confirmations. There are 5 forms of confirmations for this date of April the 13th. The first confirmation came to me with the dream that I had about my student and his mom. In the dream, I understood something was wrong with the housing market. The mom in that dream, her birthday was April 13th. On April the 11th, I had a dream about a yellow and red key. I wrote this dream down, and I think I may have shared it maybe 2 or 3 times throughout the year 2024. This year, I felt the Lord leading me to go back and to take a look at what I wrote down as far as this dream. And when I went back to see what I wrote down and to just kind of read through things again, I saw that I wrote down that I had this dream on April the 13th. However, my phone has it that I created this document for this dream on April the 11th. And as I'm looking at this, I'm saying to myself, there's no way I had this dream on April the 13th, but wrote it down on April the 11th. How can I write down something that I haven't had a dream about yet? And so I think that alone was confirmation for the date of April the 13th. I wrote it down wrong in 2024 to only come back in 2025 for God to reveal to me this date of April 13th again. The third form of confirmation that I had about the April 13th date came to me in a dream that I called 2 bears, and I've shared this dream in a video already. In this dream, I saw 2 bears. One bear was inside the house. One bear was approaching a group of people who was huddled underneath a carport. And I put in green approaching for a reason, something that I realized after I did that video and I shared the information. My conclusion was that God was showing me a bear market as it relates to the housing market and the auto industry. The housing market issue he had given to me with the date of April 13th with the dream about my student and his mom. And now here I am again seeing a bear inside of the house, which reminded me of that date of April 13th. The house that the bear was in the dream was my cousin's house. Her birthday is April the 19th. This is how April 19th comes into play. So let's hit on the bear that was approaching. The bear that was approaching the carport, the people were huddled. So many people, the carport was packed from front to the back, and they were all huddled, scared. What God is showing me now is that the bear was approaching the carport. The people were huddled, afraid. Before May 3rd, customers were buying vehicles. They were afraid of the new auto tariffs that were ahead. I think that's what that was representing. People being afraid under the carport. And recently we saw, I think May 2nd or May 3rd, that another round of auto tariffs just went into effect. They could change the industry forever. And so here we have the tariffs that started either on May 2nd or 3rd, as it relates to the auto industry. And so you hear on the news, you read articles about people being afraid of what these new tariffs could mean as far as prices for vehicles and cars. And people are running out, we're running out, afraid, trying to get a vehicle before these tariffs hit. Now, thank and praise God, God allowed us to be able to get us a new vehicle. God knows we needed a new vehicle. I can't explain how it happened. All I know, it had to be God. And so God bless us with a brand new vehicle. And so now we can haul all of our children around comfortably, and we don't have car seats piled up on top of each other. So praise God for that. So we were not one of the ones that went out and bought a vehicle before the tariffs hit. We went after, but my word tells me the blessings of the Lord make you rich and add no sorrow to it. Now let's carry this April 13th and April 19th date over to the Kobe Bryant dream. This is where I left off with all the videos that I did as far as April 13th, and then also mentioning April 19th. So I did 2 short videos about Kobe Bryant. So now confirmation 4 and 5 has to do with the Kobe Bryant dream that I had. While standing in a sports lounge, I was watching a TV screen that was divided into the top and bottom. And at the bottom of the screen, I saw an NBA game. I saw Kobe Bryant make a score, and I was quickly reminded that Kobe Bryant is not alive. He's passed away. And this game must have been a replay. Had to be a replay. And at the top of the screen, I saw a large red candle. In my mind, I thought the market is crashing, and I began to think about my put contracts. And so I went to put my donut away as I was trying to quickly clean my hands to find my phone to check my put contracts. And so I woke up from this dream not understanding what in the world does Kobe Bryant have to do with the stock market. And as I began to do my research as far as the NBA regular season is where I started, I found out that the NBA season for this year ended April 13th. And I also found out through someone in the comment section, I want to tell you thank you again for sharing this, that Kobe Bryant retired April 13th. So here again, we have 2 forms of confirmation for the date of April 13th. Also, this year, I found out that the playoffs began on April the 19th. So here we have 2 of the same dates. We had April 13th, April 19th in the Bear Dream. And we also have April 13th and April 19th as it relates to the NBA, the regular season ending, and the playoffs beginning. Now let's get to what actually happened on April the 13th. April the 13th, again, I had that date marked as crash/wealth transfer. This is what I was feeling in my spirit. And based on that Kobe Bryant dream, I was thinking puts, stock market, crash. But this has already taken place over a course of a few weeks as it relates to the month of April. And again, God confirming that that market crash will happen in April, which it did, April 13th. And so I'm, praying about it. Again, had a lot going on, family in town, getting ready for the baby, going to the hospital, false alarm. And so I'm considering this day, April 13th, God, what is it? And so I saw where different ones were sharing about this particular crypto that crashed within an hour. It dropped 80%. Now, I know a lot of times we're talking about the crash of certain coins, and when it crashed, we buy low, put in our low buy orders, and when we could on Coinbase, and now we've moved on to other platforms where we were able to do it. But we see the dumping of this particular coin, Mantra, I think is how you pronounce it. It dumped 80% in 1 hour. That to me is a definite crash. God, is this an example? Are you showing me using this particular coin what this crash is going to look like when this wealth transfer takes place, when there's a crashing of coins and your people being able to buy up all these coins at these low prices? This is what the crash is going to look like, whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's Ethereum, whatever coin it is that God has ordained to do this. This is what it's going to look like. It's not going to take long for God to do what he's going to do. It's not going to take days for it to fall, one coin to fall. This to me is a definite crash. And I had never heard of this coin before until this particular day. But looking at that large red candle drop for that 1 hour, and to look at the candle that I saw in my Kobe Bryant dream, it's almost as if you're looking at a fadeaway shot and it's just dropping down right through the hoop. But anyway, this candle that I saw for this chart reminded me of the candle that I saw in the dream. Now, was I thinking that it had something to do with the stock market? Yes. Did I buy puts that week? Yes. Did I get burned? Yes. A little bit. But it was me standing in faith, holding to what I felt was taking place in this particular dream. And so we had certain known YouTubers. I know that Crypto Wendy O covered this in a short about what took place on April the 13th with this Mantra coin. Someone was even comparing it to Terra Luna, calling it Terra Luna version 2. However, it did not tank the crypto market like Terra Luna did. Of course, there was 2 different types of coins. This, I don't think this was not a stable coin, or had a stable coin attached to it to affect the markets in the same way. But for whatever reason, this coin crashed on April the 13th. And for me, it is a sign that this is how whatever coin God has revealed as far as the crash of certain cryptos, this is what a dump looks like. In the dream, they kept saying, it's dumping, it's dumping, it's dumping. And they were excited about it dumping in the Kobe Bryant dream. And so this coin dumped 80% in 1 hour. This is the only coin crash that I know of that took place on April the 13th. So where I am now is looking at the questions. God, should MO, which is what this coin ticker is, God, should MO mean something to me when it comes to the housing market and auto industry based on the bear dream and based on the dates that you've given or shown me? Should it mean something to me when it comes down to something related to the NBA, OM, Orlando Magic? I looked up Orlando Magic, just do my research, just praying about it and researching, praying about it and researching. I saw that they played on April the 13th, Orlando Magic, OM. Looking at the housing market, there's something called Offering Memorandum, OM. Again, this is me continuing to do research on these two letters simply because of this coin that collapsed on April the 13th. So because this mantra coin crashed on April the 13th, I'm looking at the ticker OM, wondering if these two letters mean something. Now, one last thing as it relates to April 13th and the housing market. I was listening to Economic Ninja yesterday, the video titled Get Prepared for what Trump is about to do to the real estate market. And he's going through this article. This article is titled Panic as Home Buyers Bail in Droves as Realtors Reveal How They Are Waiting for a Crash as Big as 2008 for Bargains. And he's going through this article on this video yesterday, which was May the 6th. And as he's reading about it, he's getting some little cues here and there to get him to look back at the date is for when this article was written. And the article was written on April 12th, 2025, which was the day before April 13th. For me, this is pointing me in the direction that, hey, although you may not be hearing a whole lot in the news about the market, housing, and where we are as far as the housing market crash coming, how soon are we? Are we there now? Are we in it? Being that he's reading an article that's relevant to what's happening now that was written on April the 12th lets me know that there is something going on with the housing market that we may not be aware of right now, something that we may be in right now that nobody wants to talk about. So I'll continue to dig and do my research as far as that. But I didn't think it was coincidence that this article came out on April the 12th. April the 13th was my date, and he's just doing a video, and I randomly watched this video yesterday, and he's reading an article, and he stops and pauses to take a look at when this article was written, and it was written on April the 12th, the day before April the 13th. Well, that is all that I have for this video. Until the next one, God bless.